I was trying not to. All right, so we are literally 3 days out from probably Tulsa, Oklahoma, one of Tulsa's biggest events that could go really bad and hopefully not. So we've got coronavirus, we've got the riots, we've got everything going on with racial division. We've got the Greenwood district in North Tulsa that is not happy at all, completely understand. And we've got the current sitting president coming for his first rally going into election season in November. This is the first rally since coronavirus. So, what are your thoughts?
Too many.
I
so
agree.
many things.
Completely.
Now, I will add that the rally was originally scheduled to be on the 19th.
Correct.
And that's a big day for the Greenwood district.
That's correct.
They call Juneteenth.
Yep.
And I will give credit and say that the campaign, President Trump and the campaign recognized that and said
Oklahoma,
out of respect for
Governor
that,
Stitt actually
right,
asked.
out of respect for that,
Yep.
we'll move it to the 20th and not do it on the 19th. So there's a
Good.
positive there.
Agreed.
The state has had orders to not have any indoor gatherings of larger than, it started at 50 and then went to 10 very quickly, and
Yep.
that lasted until the beginning of May.
Yep.
And now we're a month and a half now, into that restriction being lifted. Restrictions have been lifted, restrictions have been opened. I mean, to be honest, it starts with, is the coronavirus real?
That was the very question I was going to ask. Is we've got two schools of thought, and it's either it's full-blown conspiracy that has been developed and created to, whether it be to get Trump out of office, to financially and economically collapse our system, to it's 100% real, it started in China. You want to talk about whether that was a conspiracy or government funded? No, I mean, the point is that this could go a thousand different ways, but I thought that we're talking about history, we're talking about documentation, right? And as Guardian shooting, in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma, that we've lived here, I've lived here since I was 6 years old, you've been here for 10 plus years. We live, we work, we run multiple businesses out of this city. This affects us. Whether I agree, I mean, and me going in, I was not a Trump supporter, hands down. I'm not a Hillary Clinton supporter, if anybody was wondering. But I was not a fan of President Trump. And with everything that's gone on coming up to this point, I would have rather much more a constitutionalist. I believe much more in personal freedom and personal responsibilities. And there's some things that he's done that I have had to 100% recognize that he's done a great job. He has moved into some areas that I don't like at all. I know we've had a lot of those conversations, but right now he is our sitting president. We were talking, when was the last time that a sitting U.S. president came and did a rally in Tulsa, Oklahoma?
Yeah, I should have looked that up, and I didn't.
I didn't either.
I don't know the answer to that, but yeah,
it's a big event.
Been a long time.
It's a huge event.
I believe President Obama did once.
Came through.
I
know we've had multiple candidates. My son went to Ted Cruz's event back in 2016. We've got pictures of him with Senator Cruz and their security team. It was a great event. The thing that's really overshadowing this is the riots. And now we've got the Greenwood district and Juneteenth, and we've got him coming in, and then we've got the medical and the coronavirus, issues that are on top of it. My interest in this is, so now my son's 16. He's extremely involved in politics. He's interested in law. This entire situation is the first time anything like this has happened. We've got education systems being completely disrupted. As a 16-year-old boy looking in saying, man, what do you guys think about current events and what's going on? And, should we go? Well, when we're talking defensively, when we're talking deselection, why on earth would I put myself in that situation? Whether we're talking from a medical consequence, whether we're talking from rioting and putting yourself in a position that things can go south very, very quickly. Would you, not living in fear.
Mm-hmm.
But if we're talking about being wise,
Right.
well, it's probably not the wisest move.
Everything is so politicized right now. I mean,
Oh.
just talking about this in a forum that people might watch publicly is kind of dangerous for us. Just
Terrifying.
because
Yeah.
most of our viewers are probably, I would imagine, going to be on the farther right
I would
end of
agree.
that conversation.
I
Not
would
all,
agree.
but the majority of them. I know a lot of people. I know a lot of ardent Trump supporters.
Mm-hmm. Very
And
much
I'm kind
so.
of in the same boat that there were a couple of other candidates that I would have chosen far ahead of President Trump. And, I've had some issues with him.
Yep.
Like you, I've seen some good things that he's done, and I've
Mhm.
also seen some things that I'm not a big fan
And I
of.
wouldn't be a fan if it was a Democrat doing it any
Exactly.
more than a Republican.
Exactly.
That's not my issue. My issue
Correct.
is constitutionally and freedom and
So
responsibility.
coming into all this, it almost feels to me like it's being politicized on that side as
And
well,
I
in
tend
the
to
sense
agree.
of let's do this.
Let's make an example, and we're not scared, and we're gonna go to the Midwest where we've got heavy support, and we're gonna make a showing. You
Right.
know, and I don't have a problem with that from a political rally.
Right.
It's a good
It's
idea.
got to be done.
You know,
Yeah,
I
it's
mean,
gotta
he's
be
got to
done.
do it at some
Absolutely.
point. We have an interesting. We're in that city, so how
Right.
is it a bad thing for
Well,
us? But-
the question would be, what would the conversation be if it were the other candidate that were doing
Correct. Correct.
it? Does he have just as much of a right to do it?
Absolutely.
And now we've got this situation where there are 1 million people
That have
that
shown
have requested
registered, yes.
tickets
Yeah.
for a
200,000
venue that can hold 19,000.
Oh, right.
The way it's set
right.
up, 19,000
Yeah.
is what the limit is going to be. And apparently, there are 3 days in advance, there are already people from around the country camped because they basically said it's going to be a first come, first serve.
Mhm.
You can sign up, but if you're not first in line, you're probably not getting in, which, kind of hurts Tulsa locals
Sure,
who aren't going to be as interested in going to camp out, but want to attend
for sure.
the event.
Well-
and then there's the question of, an indoor event like this, is this a potential danger of spreading the virus?
Sure.
I think there.
Well, anything logically, I don't care if you put 19,000 people in and a
Mhm.
bunch of people have the flu, there's going to be a high level of increased spread.
And let me add, for those that would say, "But what about the riots?" Yeah, I think it's number one. It's pretty clear that I think the riots are spreading it as well.
Yep.
Number two, the riots are also outdoors.
Correct.
Outdoors and indoors very different,
Sure.
but even outdoors in that close.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think we're seeing some of that starting to happen.
I agree.
Some of the numbers that we're seeing are probably from Memorial Day and opening, but there's some things going on from the riots as well. So
Mhm.
certainly it's growing from that.
Sure.
Is this going to cause growth? I mean, I think to me, the important thing is everything that we did was for the purpose of flattening the curve, as they say,
Right.
to reduce the strain on the hospital system so it didn't get overloaded.
Which clearly that
in this case, that
has
worked,
happened,
because the
absolutely.
numbers of people hospitalized in Tulsa are extremely low.
Correct.
So even if there is an outbreak in this situation, I don't think, based on the data that I've seen, I don't think it will overwhelm Tulsa's hospital systems.
Agreed.
I think we've also seen increase in, now we don't have any miracle drugs or anything, but it does seem as though treatments are getting better. The knowledge of how doctors are treating patients with severe cases
Well, and I
is
think that's
improving.
the thing, the information around the treatment
Correct.
of people with it. We're not going to talk about the fatality rate and the spread rate and
Right.
asymptomatic and everything else, but
But I
having
don't
a
think
real
that,
conversation.
I don't think that this event will cause our hospitals to
No.
overload.
No.
And that would be the reason why you would say we're not going to hold this event,
Correct.
because, and I don't think the data allows us to
Supports.
go there.
I agree.
Therefore, I think that the evidence that we have says, yes, if they'll put in some reasonable precautions, and I know they're going to have hand sanitizing stations, they're going to give masks to everyone to wear, and I know everybody's divided on mask use. The evidence I've seen indicates that in a situation like
It
that,
works,
if everybody or most everybody's wearing a mask, it will probably prevent
or at least slow down the spread.
much of the spread.
That's a pretty simple
Right.
way to say that.
Mhm.
So last piece of the puzzle, that's probably the most volatile and the most painful, is watching the riots, especially with
Right.
Greenwood District.
Mhm.
The 1921, it's not even a riot, it was a massacre of
Right.
Black Wall Street. up there, Cincinnati and Archer and everything in Northside. And I've got John 316 Mission, and the directors up there are great friends of mine. We spent a lot of time up there, and we've done a lot of stuff with them. It's real. And anybody who wants to act like that Juneteenth and the Trump rally coming in on top of all of the riots and on top of the law enforcement shooting and you know, yeah, without jumping into that 10 foot deep, we could have that conversation for an hour. There's a lot of people very, very angry, very, very upset right now. And to realize that entire conversation on top of Juneteenth and everything going on is something that people need to at least be aware of. And I think it comes back to our natural biases and tendencies. You know, we live in Oklahoma, and I think a lot of people are very insensitive to the fact that black people in general are saying, hey, pay attention, listen up, there's some stuff and some problems that we need to deal with. Do I think they're dealing with it right? No. Do I think the majority of the protesters are rioters? No. But when you see just the absurdity and stupidity that is around these protests, the thing I've been the most impressed with, you know, in Claremore, we had a 14-year-old girl that actually set up and actually did a protest in Claremore, that she was very articulate. She communicated her points well. They did it peacefully. They went out and they had a good time. They did their thing. There were a lot of churches that were involved in a whole other side of it, you know, but that's a protest and a conversation that's worth having. And then we can have the conversation about law enforcement and the misconceptions that people have on how law enforcement engage with people and people's expectations of, you know, they think that they're prior military, therefore they know everything about guns. And people have this assumption that if you were in the military, you must know everything about guns. And my grandpa's dad's uncle's, you know, dog served once, therefore he taught me how to shoot and I know everything. Well, we have the exact same misconceptions when it comes to law enforcement. And there's just a lot of stuff on that I'd be interesting to see, you know, where people's thoughts, what do they want to hear our thoughts on? Because I really think that's ultimately it. You know, we have a unique experience and a unique perspective, and I think ultimately we come at things very much from both sides. You know, if we don't have the ability to at least understand the counter argument, we won't even discuss it. So for us to have a conversation about anything, I can promise you at any given time, you or I are capable of arguing the opposing view. And you're more of an instigator and a stir pot than I am, but it's definitely one that I think it's worth having the conversation. And of all the stupidity that's out there being discussed, maybe we should have some people with some reasonable heads on their shoulders having a conversation. And keep the thing civil, have a good conversation.
We need to be able to hear the conversations and talk to people. You know, there are organizational issues.
For sure.
You know, whether you look at an organization like a small town police force or an organization like the organization Black Lives Matter. We could look at both of those organizations and say there are some problems here. But when you go down to the people, the individuals, look at the police officers that are right now having a horrible time dealing with some of this, and some of them being good men that are sincerely trying to promote safety and help their communities. And then you have people that are attached to the Black Lives Matter organization that they're not going to the extremes that some are. They're just trying to
want to have a real conversation.
They want their voice heard
because
they've legitimately had experiences that, you know, you and I have talked about the experiences that some people have had that I haven't had to worry about some things that
100%.
Some of the black friends that I have had to worry about. We talked about one of our friends that used to train with us that he's fought so much all his life and he's done well. And he's fought through those things, but he's had to deal with things that we never had to deal with.
If your son and my son at 16 years old are driving down the road in the vehicles that they drive in and the way that they look and what they do and their interaction with law enforcement, are we seriously going to sit here with a straight face and say that if the exact same people in the exact same vehicles were black, that they would be treated exactly the same way?
No. And as much
That's
as
an
people want to
interesting
argue
way,
it,
right.
I think clearly, if you're honest,
That's
if
the
you're
whole deal,
honest
man.
about it, and
I'm
I
not
think-
saying right, wrong, or indifferent. I'm saying
Correct.
forget the law enforcement perspective. If my son was black instead of white,
Mhm.
same age, same vehicle, same job, same everything,
Right.
what would his interactions look like on a day-to-day basis? And I can promise you they're different.
Right.
Doesn't mean that it's justification
Right.
one way or the other, but I can promise you it's different.
Mhm.
And for people to behave like it's not, I think it is just the most naive way of
And it-
looking at
that
things.
creates some of the problems because it creates an
Agreed.
offense, and the offense starts to grow, and it circles because the offense then gets
Perception's
gets
reality,
taken
right?
wrong. Yes.
So if somebody has had a reality
Mhm.
and someone else says your reality is wrong, who's going to listen to that?
Right.
You can't have a intellectually honest conversation if that's where you begin.
Mhm.
So anyway, that I think there's just a lot of stuff going on, a lot of interesting things coming up.
Right.
Um,
I think the biggest thing for us is that we need to learn to actually think critically, and look for not only the issues in the
Yeah.
other side, but look for the issues in our camp or our world or our culture, and look for where the
look
problems
for
are,
the
because there are
issues in
holes.
our own echo chambers.
Yes. Look for what are the issues, what are the real questions. Are we just spouting talking points that we heard on a local talk news station? Or
Even though you may
nationally
believe it.
syndicated talk news station?
Right.
Are we just spouting talking points? Or are we actually trying to get to the bottom of what's really going on?
The real issue. And I mean,
Can
you
we
and
talk
I,
to people?
you and
Can
I
we
are this way.
disagree? And
We are always the guys that are like, don't tell me about the problems. Let's go to a solution.
right.
And I think that's where we are as a nation, is let's go to solutions.
And I think that's one of the areas that President Trump needs to work on doing better on, that I think over the past couple months we've seen that he hasn't done a very good job of, just as an example, and I hesitate because I don't want to get too political on
Right,
it,
no, I
but
get that.
some of the comments that he made in his earlier press briefings when he was talking about the coronavirus, and he referred to particular Democratic governors that he didn't particularly like
Mhm.
as that woman,
Mhm.
or I wouldn't call him, don't call him.
Well, it's the same thing
And
as
those kind of comments,
it's still
is he trying
President
to listen?
Trump.
Correct.
It's that, right?
Correct.
It was did we refer to President Obama?
Sure, absolutely.
It's respect.
Right.
Man, we can be civil and we can still show respect
Mhm.
when I disagree.
Right.
And when one side demands respect when it's their candidate and won't give respect when it's the other, or vice versa, it kind of tells you
Right.
all you need to know. So,
You got to be willing to listen and find. There's more common ground with people, even that we disagree with. If we'll look for the common ground, and when we find common ground,
then maybe
we can
have a
discuss these
conversation.
issues
That's right.
and try to come to a solution. We're not going to agree politically.
No. Heck,
But
we don't
we can
agree
come to
politically with Republicans.
Right.
And I've been a claimed conservative for my entire life.
Right.
And I fight more with Republicans than I do with Democrats. Like,
But the reason for that comes back to what you said about echo chamber.
right,
Some of the questions that I post,
you're
aren't-
challenging.
I'm
thought
challenging.
process.
I'm
That's
challenging
right.
my echo chamber
Yes,
to think, and we've got to work through. Is
it's
this
amazing
really
if
the
you
answer?
ask a question that challenges the status quo, you automatically are put into an opposite category. When the whole point is, I'm trying to make my echo chamber better. I want to make the people around me better. You can ask my kids.
You want to make your echo chamber better, or you want to take away the echo chamber?
Take away the echo chamber. Well, I was going to my kids. The first debate that my son had to do, I made him argue against the Second Amendment.
Yeah.
I told him, I said, anybody in my household can argue for. Tell me that you can argue against. And I think that is learn how to intellectually challenge yourself.
Right.
Because that was the hardest thing for him, was to go, but I completely agree with, find the other
Right.
side.
I really like the way somebody put it. He said, "I'm not left or right. I'm up or down." And we can all make that kind of statement, and we've all got our biases. But the point was, our focus shouldn't be on, let me pick my camp and then stay with the camp.
Right.
The focus should be on up or down. That is, are we being intellectually honest about the issues, or are we just being rigid in our bias that I am right or I am left, therefore, as long as you are right or left with me, we'll be okay, and if you're not, let's be honest and recognize that there are points on both sides.
Right.
And we need to recognize where those points are and where they break down, where the flaws are.
For sure.
We need to find.
And I mean, we're the
reasonable
first people to say
solutions.
compromise is not how we believe.
Right.
But I can at least understand.
Right.
So.
And we believe there are moral absolutes.
Correct.
And there are lines that you don't cross.
That's right.
They're absolute. But then there are things that are principles that are outside of those absolutes that we've got to work through, and we're going to come to different conclusions.
That's right.
And we can do that, but let's be respectful and open and honest in the way we deal with it.
Way to end it. So let's try to actually do that. But if I was a betting man, back with us, we'd love to hear from you. Take it easy, guys.